and welcome to the ROCKATX online worship experience. You are getting ready to experience God on another level. Whatever you're seeking from God for your life is available for you as you praise, hear the word, and transform your situation. While you're worshiping with us, feel free to interact with our online ministers in the chat and share this broadcast with your friends and family so they can join you online. Also, make sure you subscribe and follow the ROCKATX on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to stay connected to all the Rock is doing. Now, shake off the worries of the week and get ready to give God some praise. Service will begin soon.
What was happening with the Jews in the context of this story in Luke was nothing more than the pendulum theory applied to life. Jesus is doing this thing, his disciples is doing their thing, and they get challenged by many of the Pharisees. And they asked a question. They said, why are y'all not fasting? Why are y'all hanging out with people who y'all are hanging out with? You know, why are you doing what it is you do? They asked this question. And they asked this question, and they're very, very passionate about this question. And because they're seeing what Jesus is doing, and they look at it with very skeptical eyes because you're not operating like we operate. You're not talking to who we usually talk to. You're not hanging with who we hang with. And so now we're questioning your motives. We're questioning your source. We're questioning everything about you because you're not operating right. Go to my next slide. What we got to understand, and what you got to understand is this: that when you look at the Jewish history and the Jewish history, you realize that they were operating off of some rules about fasting, about the company you keep, about how you operate, about how you live, about what you do, about who you talk to, about what you eat, about when you pray, because they had, over the years, added several layers of rules and rhetoric to the original Ten Commandments. So if you can imagine, you start out with 10 commandments, then they begin to, the rabbis or the teachers begin to add, let me explain to you how this works. And the rabbis had what they call the oral traditions. Oral traditions means they passed them on by just telling people, this is what we do. And so one rabbi would teach, and then he would then, come here, Charles. He would then, if I'm the rabbi and Charles was my pupil, I would sit down with Charles and I would talk to him about, what it is we believe and why we believe this, and I would pass down what we call the oral traditions, right? So then as I passed them down, I would make sure that he got them, and I make sure that he understood them. And then come along here, and then Rachel would come along, and then Charles would have to. Then as I got older, my time would go around, and then Charles would say, "I've got to pass down these old traditions to you." And so Charles would begin to talk and tell her what I said, right? And so he began to tell her everything that I said. Right? But then as Charles got older, now Rachel would sit there, and then she would look at Q, come here, Quincy, and then she would say, okay, Quincy, I got to tell you how to do these things. So then Rachel would then pass down the oral traditions. So if you can imagine, for centuries, this is how people were learning how to understand God. Okay, does it make sense? Right, now, if you can imagine, Q said one day, she says, maybe I should write this down. because Dr. Moody is no longer here, Charles is no longer here, he's gone on, and Rachel is no longer here. So I need to make sure I write these things down. So she began to write down. Listen, her commentary on the oral traditions. So she wrote what she thought about how to operate and how to live in the oral traditions. Does it make sense? But then Sariah would come along, and while she was writing, and she would hand everything to Sariah, and Sariah said, "Let me make this clear." So then she would write her commentary on the commentary of the oral traditions of Rachel, who talked about the oral traditions of Charles, who talked about the oral traditions of Dr. Moody. So now Sariah now is writing her own oral traditions, right? Now here's the deal. So Sariah is writing her commentary, but we also have Q's commentary, right? So now what would happen is this: Tammy would come along, because Tamara. Now listen, the thing you know about Tamara, she wants to get it right. So what she's gonna do is she's gonna take the oral traditions of Q and the oral traditions of Sariah, and then she's gonna write a commentary on both of those traditions. So now she's writing to explain. She's writing to explain what Dr. Moody told Charles, what Charles told Rachel, what Rachel told Q, what Q wrote down, and then what Sariah wrote based upon what Q wrote, and she wants to make sure that she writes down now the truth on how to live. Does it make sense? So now, what you ended up with was commentaries on top of commentaries, talking about the oral traditions of the oral traditions of the oral traditions of the oral traditions. Am I making sense? Making sense? No, thank you. So now, Tammy, no, stay there. Because Tammy got all traditions. But then the problem was, then somebody said, well, these are just the commentaries. Now, but Linda got to figure out how to practically apply the commentaries to real life. So then Belinda would come on and say, okay, give me all the commentaries. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to practically apply all the commentaries. Because you got to know how to live now based upon all these commentaries. So now, Belinda is writing things like the Mishnah. The Mishnah is saying, okay, since we believe in the old commentaries, this is how you do agriculture according to God's law. This is how women operate according to God's law. This is how marriage operates, a relationship operates according to God's law. So now we have the Mishnah that was telling us now this is the practical application of how to follow the commentaries of the commentaries of the commentaries of the oral traditions of the oral traditions of the oral traditions. Make sense? And then Felicia would come and say, now I'm going to write the Talmud, which is a commentary on how to live the Mishnah, which explains to you how to follow the commentaries of the oral traditions of the oral traditions of the oral traditions. So hundreds of years have passed by, and so you can imagine now, so the scribes and Pharisees were doing this all the time, and the rabbis. That make sense? So come here, Elder Sneed. Come here, Elder English. Now, the Pharisees will come because now Jesus is coming along And Jesus is now teaching and preaching. But the problem is, he's talking to and hanging out with Rachel, who was at the club the other night. Come on, woman of God. And so now Jesus is talking to Rachel about, how to live in the kingdom. The Pharisees look at this mess. And so Jesus breaks it down and chopping it up, and he says, "Okay, wait a minute. Not just the people in the club, but I need a tax. Come here, Elder Rutley, come here. We need now. She's a tax collector. So now I'm sharing the gospel with them, and I'm talking to them about what it's like to live in the kingdom. This is what's happening. And the Pharisees are mad because I'm breaking all the rules that they've come up with based upon their teaching. And so they call a meeting with me, with Jesus, and they're like, how are you having dinner with them? How are you not fasting? How are you breaking all these rules when we got thousands and thousands of years of rules, and this ain't how we operate? Now, I'm making sense. This is the scenario, thank you, that we are dealing with.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you're in need of prayer or someone to talk to, our online ministers are available for you right now in the chat. And we invite you to join us again for our extraordinary worship services every Sunday at 10:30 a.m., Sunday at 4 p.m., and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central, where Dr. Moody teaches how to understand the Bible and you can get your biblical questions answered. We look forward to connecting with you and ask that you subscribe to TheROCKATX on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected to all The Rock is doing. Also, you can connect with us through our website at TheROCKATX.org. Again, thank you for worshiping with us, and be blessed.